Black Power. Baba TV, yeah. Black Power. Subscribe to Baba TV. Baba TV every time fire. Black Power. If you need a lift, tune in to Baba TV. It's going down. Black consciousness will take you higher. Black Power. If you need a lift, tune in to Baba TV. It's going down. It's Baba TV every time fire, fire. Every time fire, oh, yeah. Every time fire, fire. Every time fire. Black Power. Every time fire.
This presentation is made to supplement any other debates or conversations that I have on the Coptic Christians being the first modern terrorist order and organization that used terror to destroy the legacy of ancient Egypt. In general, terrorism is classified as the use of violence or the threat of violence in the pursuit of political, religious, ideological, social objectives and acts committed by non-state actors or by undercover personnel serving on the behalf of their respective governments. Acts reaching more than the immediate target victims and also directed as targets consisting of a large spectrum of society, both mala prohibita, i.e. crime that is made illegal by legislation, and mali nc, crimes that is inherently immoral or wrong. Wikipedia is the source for this. The Coptic Christians in Egypt were unique to the world, for it used the gospel and tenets of Christ to recruit all agents needed in this holy war, people from all walks of life, politicians, multi-ethnics in Egypt. It created the use of martyrs for the purposes of war and terror, whether Mark was murdered by the Serapis followers or whether it mattered. The fanatic Coptics would be looking to be martyred for their fanatical faith as the ultimate way to be Christ-like. The Coptic Christians built their monasteries or camps in the desert where they hid from prying Roman eyes and launched attacks and planned attacks. Al-Qaeda, ISIS got nothing on the Copts. They invented terror camps. The Coptic Christian thinkers seduced Constantine and Rome, led them on to how to control people. The Coptic Christians, after every political gain that they received from their success with Rome, used this as a green light to attack African people and their legacy of African people until there was no operating or visiting temples or teaching of Nile Valley culture. This video is made to supplement any other statements that I have said and any debates that I have done on the Coptics being the first modern terrorist organization that took out. This video is to supplement any other debates or any other statements that I have made on the subject that Coptics, the Coptic Christians, were the first modern terrorist order. This video is to supplement any previous conversations, debates that I have had on the subject that the Coptic Christians were the first modern terrorist order and organization. In general, terrorism is classified as the use of violence. Please refer to any previous debates that I have had on the subject or any other conversations that are public that I've had on the conversation for a fuller presentation on this particular important matter. What I will do today is that I will show you some primary material that strengthens my point on who the Coptics were and how this terrorism was set up. It is not going to be complete. It is partial. It supports my previous conversations on the matter. But it is important for us to interact with the knowledge, to seek places where the knowledge is, and to display primaries whenever possible. Here's a picture of the Virgin enthroned, holding Jesus on her lap, and is surrounded by the apostles. In this fresco, decorated a painting niche at the Bawak Monastery south of Cairo, founded by a hermit, I would not say holy, hermit, around AD 385. The monastery declined in the 9th century, but its iconic, vibrant artwork remains. The hermit was more than likely Saint Amun. The Coptics repurposed much of ancient Egyptian culture, from the Astrakhan to ancient Egyptian temples, during the attack of the Coptics on the African religion, now called pagan. This museum walk gives us an opportunity to see and interact with the artifacts. Through the Ptolemy, the Ptolemy, Hypatia became the priestess of a stolen culture, stolen religion, stolen civilization. The culture that was destroyed by the Coptic Christians was African. There are many books on the subject. You could read Riot in Alexandria for purposes. This gives us the opportunity to look at this picture on the left. Though you see Hypatia representing the African religion, you see a Nubian, an African Egyptian in the foreground. This is what this conversation is about. The conversation is about how the Coptic Christians destroyed the ancient Egyptian religion's order legacy. Now, much has been said about the Christian kingdom of Aksum under King Ezana. No matter how great, it was converted to a foreign religion and destroyed the African kingdom of Meroe, and the result of this is leaving his history undeciphered. To all the Black Christian Coptics, to all the Black Christians, the Coptics, no matter how great the kingdom of Aksum in Ethiopia was, no matter all the glory that it's gotten, the Christian kingdom of Aksum under King Ezana, no matter how great, again, converted to a foreign religion and destroyed the African kingdom of Meroe in Nubia, and the result is leaving its great history undeciphered. In the museum tour, I will show one of the early Coptic Bibles. There you will see the apostles as Europeans. Here King Ezana is talking to two captives who taught him and who helped convert him to Christianity. This is the legacy that no one wants to talk about. It was a foreign religion that King Ezana converted to, and no matter how great Ethiopia was or Ethiopia became, the fact of the matter is that they took on a foreign religion. To all the Black Christians, the Coptics, and the ignorant, Coptic Christianity was never Black-led and was a foreign force that attempted to destroy the memory of the great Africans who gave birth to civilization itself. And so we have the artifacts of the early Coptic Church written in those monasteries, and every single one of them, the apostles are not black. They are in fact European. So without further ado, walk through with me and see the artifacts of Christianity from the periods of medieval to its Coptic beginnings. We're looking at one of the images of the Black Madonna and Child. But when black people say that we worship, that the Europeans worshipped the Black Jesus and the Black Mary, if you notice, they are in the skin color may be black, but they have the phenotypes are white. So we're going to discuss a little bit of this. So this is another image where Christian apologists would say that this is, you see, this is the Black Madonna. So here is the Virgin of the Immaculate Conception. She's standing on maybe an apple or a pear. She's got the snake, the serpent at her feet, and she is showing that she is victorious. And so Christian apologists will say, look, this is the Black Madonna. So the reason why I'm in this section is because the European is always going to deify himself. And so even though I showed you the pictures of the Black Madonna and Child and the Immaculate Conception, who is behind it is the mind of the conqueror, the mind of the victor, and ultimately, at the end of the day, they're going to deify or put their God in the likeness of themselves, even if they play with the skin color. All right, so don't be fooled. The Renaissance period is a period where we want to see the contrasts of course, in France, in this case, in France, the French Renaissance period, of the images of Christ. So that's the image of Christ and Mary, right? The Virgin and Child. So we want to see how it changes. So what we're finding out, you know, Baba, what we're finding out is that the images of Christ is really not consistent. Because of the tints of Christ, Christ becomes a savior for all people, right? And so people can make an image into whatever they want to make the image in, but we have to look at actually the tenets of the philosophy. Turn it off. So we're moving into different areas of Europe. We are looking at some of the same forms. Some will be Italian, some will be French. And we're going to see in these periods that the image of Christ this is great. This is about 1200 AD, right? The images of Christ, you can find whatever you want in Christ. You can make it any image that you want for all peoples. Baba, this is 12. This is 1200 AD, right? And this is a prayer book, and it's actually in Hebrew and Aramaic. And this is 1200. So this is, of course, before the slave trade. They weren't even really thinking about us, but they were in the concept of Christianizing Europe. So we're in this whole period where Europe is being Christianized in this particular period. And so, again, people will say that there's blacks in the Bible and black people were in the Bible. But you see the images of Christ is in fact changing. All right? And the images of Mary so this whole period here is medieval Europe, 1050 to 1300, and where Europe is being Christianized, right? And their major problem is in fact the Arabs. In this particular period, right, how can I say, the Bible hasn't been written in English yet, right, by King James, right? And so here we have 1850 to 1875 in northern France, and we have the gospel, right, and we have Greek still being used, and we have Aramaic still being used, and we have Latin being used. So in here we have the Bible in 1180 in it's on Latin, right? So we have the Bible in several different languages because Europe is being Christianized in this particular period, right? The African is not part of this drama at all. The African is not part of this drama, except for Africans who were largely North Africans who did trade or was a part of this. The other major movement, of course, is Islam, the Arab expansion of Islam. So Christianity and Islam is in conflict. So we're getting closer to where I want to go, because this is earlier. Now this is 1080, right? So we're a little earlier than what they call the Middle Ages, for the most part. And this this book, right, is written in Constantinople, right? And you can look at the picture of the person. And a person could immediately say, well, this is an African person in the book, right? But the question is this a style? What are the styles? This is in Constantinople, right? What are the styles? So a lot of times what happens is that a lot of people look at art and they make art what they want. So here the people are browns, but can you say that they're black and they can say African or African descent? Well, they're just dark Europeans. You can look at their legs. It's an artistic style. So here, this is something that people really don't see is, the artwork of the particular periods. And so here are the apostles in 1100, right? In Greek, right? And you could, and so you can say, well, in 1100 in Constantinople, right? How did they portray the image of the apostles in Christ in Constantinople at 1100? Are they black? Are they European? Is it Greek? Right? So that's the issue. And so we have to understand that, Greek is a major language of Christianity. Like, if we look over there, usually that's in, that would be in Greek, and the other languages come later. But, so now we have some conflict here, right? So now, we have a picture of someone who they can say is an African, and they would say that, oh, that looks Ethiopian, right? But the issue is, remember when I talked about best interest for black people and being conducive to the survival and development of African people? Well, whoever that is into the survival and development of his religion. Doesn't matter what his color is. Doesn't matter what his color is. This is painting. These paintings are in the 1400s. Interesting. And if you look at the images again, it's a 4 icons from a pair of panel doors of a politic, St. John, the theologians, and Barosaurus. And this is painting in the 1400s. So this is not at the time of Christ at all. It's not at the time of Christ, of course. These are artists' renditions of what's happening, right? And they have the right to portray at any given time what they think is it, but the fact of the matter is it primary? It's primary to the period, but it's not primary to the subject of who Christ and the apostles are. Africans have no friends. Dr. John Henry Clark. The Christians are historically the enemy of Africa. Africa, particularly Kemet, Egypt, was weakened by the invasions of the Assyrians, Libyans, Greeks, and Rome, but it was the Christian Coptics that destroyed Kemet in antiquity and in the modern times. They destroyed the legacy of ancient Egypt, Kemet. My previous debates focused on the first phase of the destruction of the African order. Christian apologists attempt to read Bible passages and their commitment to what is called the teachings of Jesus Christ. However, if such a man lived, he died. We look not at Jesus' story, but the history of the people who claim to follow his teachings. Those that claim to have followed his teachings turned murderous and destructive in Africa in the following 400 years after they came into Egypt from their sojourn in Babylon and became something other than Hebrews. So now we are in the period that I really want to be in. This is the period 330 years after so-called the life of Christ, in this period where Constantine the Great now basically makes Christianity part of the Roman state. And there are lots of theories that Rome created Christianity, or that Christianity was a sect of Hebrewism that went rogue and went on steroids, and then ultimately partnered with Rome. But Rome, at this particular time, was in a real conflict of a major conflict with the Hebrews. Okay. So we haven't talked much about the Hebrews. There's a time. The Hebrews historically is a very interesting group of people in history. Most of the time we only look at the Hebrews in the context of the time of the pharaohs, right, and the Bible and the Old Testament, right? But we know we do know a lot more about real history of the Hebrews from the time period of, let's say, Assyria and Babylon, from real documents conquering Judah and Israel. We have lots of information about the Hebrews inside Babylon. We have information about the Alexander the Great, as he is called, fighting the Babylon. Alexander the Great's conquering of the area. We have. So we have a good period there, but we also have a period where the Babylonians and the Persians, that's what I meant to say, and the Hebrews being liberated from their bondage in Babylon. by the Persians, and then we have a whole period of Alexander the Great, defeat of the Persians, and then we have there's a long history of Hebrews in these particular periods. Now, all of these periods are before the birth of Christ, right? So there's no Christianity, right? And so I wanted to show you some key artifacts. I don't think it's in this section of the period of Rome in Hebrew, so that I can give a backdrop of this contrast that I want to get. This would be important for all of the so-called religious groups of people, because we're in a period of 133 in Roman Palestine, in Rome, in Byzantine, right? And we have in this particular period, we have this conflict between the Romans and the Hebrews. And the Hebrews had a monstrous war with the Romans, almost to extinction. And so this coin is a coin of Vespasian's celebration of destroying Jerusalem, right? Destroying the Jewish temple. These are artifacts from this area, right? Where Rome destroyed. So we have real evidence of the destruction of the Jewish temple by Rome, right? And the conflict. Persian in this, and so all these artifacts support now. They support these periods of the rise of early Christianity. So these would be the conquerors. These are the Romans, right? And so are the Romans all white and the Hebrews all black? Right? Because it never gets depicted as that, right? So when we have these conflicts, when we have these kind of conversations, it's not interacting with the artifacts to even care. So we were in this period when I last showed you about 133 BC with some coins after the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans, right? Now, what is the Christian story? The Christian story is basically, maybe Jesus, the Christ dies, I don't know, maybe 39 AD or something like that. His disciples, or earlier, his disciples continue his work. And then Africa becomes Christianized through the Coptics. And the Ethiopians form their church. And these are all black, right? These are the black portions of Christianity, and that some of the other people believe that black people was in the Nicaea, the Conference of Nicaea, and the Conferences of Constantinople or Ephesus, right? They believe that. And that black people constructed these tenets and holy books, and it wasn't Europeans. So let's explore that. The Metropolitan Museum of Art has an incredible exhibition entitled Art and Peoples of the Karga Oasis on view to June 7th, 2020, and I encourage everyone to visit it on your walk of the museum. The exhibition is largely about the Coptic experience in the Karga Oasis, and this Coptic experience was what gave birth to the Coptic presence in Egypt. Fortunately, left out of history is what the Coptics in fact did to African religion and African culture. It basically destroyed or attempted to destroy the legacy of ancient Egypt, and was one of the major reasons why it took so long to decipher the hieroglyphics or the writing system of ancient Egyptian, for the Coptics attempted to wipe that legacy out for history. It is also important to know that most of the ancient Egyptian temples were repurposed to become Coptic monasteries and Coptic churches. And so the following map is a map most people have never seen, but it is about the Coptic presence in ancient Egypt, and it shows how widespread it was. And this experience of the Coptics in Egypt was the engine that pushed ancient Egyptian religion, culture, writing, language into obscurity. So where we are is in the holiest of holies in the museum, one of the several holies of holies. And this is the holiest of holies of dealing with the spread of Christianity. Christianity had to spread. It spread through the word, and it spread through the written material. And Constantine, of course, became the engine of the spread of Christianity. And as we had seen earlier, there was this war against the Hebrews. At some point, we can go through the different wars, but the fall of Jerusalem was devastating to the Hebrews. The question is, where were the Christians when this happened? Where were the Christians when the fall of Jerusalem occurred, right? Where are the Christian stories about the fall of Jerusalem? So we don't have that. You can tell from the Bible story that one of the disciples, Mark, right, fled as a young boy, right? And he stopped at Egypt for 7 years, right? He stopped at Egypt for 7 years. And then later, and taught, and the tradition followed, and that became what they call the beginning of the Coptic Church, because the Coptic Church is spoken in Coptic, which is the last form of the Egyptian language. And what we're here for is to see the establishment of Christianity in Africa, right? And for me to destroy the myths. The Temple of Habis. Christianity spread across the Mediterranean in the 4th century AD. Some pharaonic temples, such as the Temple of Habis, was converted into Christian churches, also known as the Temple of Amun-Ra. The Temple of Habis is one of the best preserved temples in the Western Desert, built in the 6th century BC. The sandstone structure was used to continuously for nearly 1,000 years. Right? Next to the temple are ruins from a Christian community, including numerous late antique houses and buildings, hundreds of objects from pottery to jewelry. Now, if you're not a scholar, you have no idea what that just said. It said that Christianity spread across the Mediterranean. Some pharaonic temples, such as the Temple of Habis, were converted into Christians. It's a very passive destruction, right? The Temple of Habis was created roughly in the time period where the Persians conquered Egypt. So we're looking at the late period. However, the Persians were very interested in the Persians were very interested in the concepts of the ancient Egyptians. Inside the temple abyss is, see, ancient people who study ancient Egyptian religion, Baba, they look at ancient Egypt as all one period, right? Mm-hmm. They don't understand that there's different golden ages and different intermediate periods where things completely change. At the time of the late period, where the Persians happened, where the Persians conquered Egypt, they wanted to completely know Egypt's secrets. So they created this Temple of Abyss. And the Temple of Abyss was created when, how can I say, the Amun-Ra cult had fled. They had fled into the Karga Oasis, and that's where we are. When they fled into the Karga Oasis, there were oases like Siwa. These were religious centers of ancient Egypt where lots of the concepts were coming out, and they were coming out into the main parts, but they were thought out in these areas. The Persians resurrected the Temple of Abyss, and in the Temple of Abyss we have some major thinking of, watch this, of what the ancient Egyptians believed of in their religion at that time. I'm going to read you something from the Temple of Amun. You are Amun, you are Atum, you are Kepler, you are the sole one who made himself into millions. Right? Tatanim, who came about in the beginning, you are the one who built his body with his own hands in every form of his desire. I want to stop right there because most people don't understand it, what I just said. It's in this period where there's a unity of God. They're not different natures, right? There were aspects. You are Amun, you are Re, you are Kepri, you are the sole one. There's a unity. Now this unity of concepts will follow other traditions like the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, right? This happened here. This happened in Abyss. Now, interesting, Christianity will now convert the temples of ancient Egypt into churches, right? Let's just take a look at some of the concepts. Interesting, you see a pyramid and you see a cross, right? Here, inside a fire, which is like Ray, you will see a star, very, very similar. But this is in Coptic This is in Coptic Christianity, right? This becomes Coptic Christianity. Over here, you will see the cross inside of you make it say a crown. Let's just go on the other side. I want to show you something. Remember, beliefs of Egyptian beliefs are now being converted into Christian beliefs, right? So we have an ankh with a face in it, looking more like a cross. Now, mind you, this is in a Christian. This is in a Christian quarter, right? I'm going to say, and I'm going to talk about the monasteries, right? And here, look over here. You can see a picture of. You can take a picture of that, of a Roman, African, and you can see Horus. Now, Baba, at this particular time period, ancient Egyptian language was still being spoken, and ancient Egyptian temples were still open, and ancient Egyptian writing was still being written. Who destroyed that? Did the Romans destroy that? Or did someone else destroy it? So we are going to talk a little bit about that. And this is a preview, so this is not the, this is just a preview, a taste of it. This is the fact of the matter is that Christianity went to war with ancient Egypt. And it was Christianity that stomped out the belief system of ancient Egypt. They converted the religious systems of ancient Egypt and became the ancient Egyptians, right? In force. So here are mummifications of monks, right? Even in their stories, this is inside one of the temples. Inside here, you can see the whole Christian story as a kind of like this is a relief of a ceiling, right? And you can see ankhs, and you can see the whole complete story of Christianity within this, and you can see all of this in this particular period. It's just being written.
And these are the artifacts.
Yeah, these are artifacts. So, but over here, basically in the Karga Oasis, where there's abyss, this is where the Egyptian army was being formed through a series of monasteries and monks. And there were thousands of monks, Christian monks, and then later, from hundreds to thousands, and they formed themselves in these monasteries, which were pews like this. This is why this is like this, right? And so you have all these stories of, of course, of following how the Septuagint was done, meaning the conversion of the Hebrew Bible into Greek. Well, then you have these soldiers who are monks writing Bibles, translating Bibles, creating the Christian army for Constantinople. Now, this gets really, really, really important is because one of the people of the Conference of Nicaea, Nosotros, he was exiled here. Nosotros was exiled here in the Karga Oasis in Habis, right, for being a heretic. But more interesting is that these Christians went to war with the African Egyptians are now pagans. That's what they're being called. And so the major notion of destruction that we have is the killing of Hypatia. Now, Hypatia was a priestess. She was not necessarily an African priestess. She was most likely a Ptolemy priestess, but she was the epicenter of the belief of the African belief that had went to the Ptolemies, and it was these monks that went in basically Alexandria, right, and destroyed her and murdered her. They pulled her from a chariot and they cut her with shells, cut off her skills. But what that meant was that the Christians who became Coptics waged war on the African beliefs. And so when we try to justify Christianity and say that they were black, no, they was doing what was conducive to the survival and development of their faith. It had nothing to do with their color, right? Against African people. And so I'll just show you one more artifact because this is just a teaser, right? So let's go. So So basically, you could have seen the video, but this is just for your research. This is in Saqqara, right? It says in 500s, Jeremiah found a Coptic monastery at Saqqara in the ancient Egyptian necropolis. In Saqqara is where the Step Pyramid is. And you can see that Christians are going to African holy places and African Egyptian holy places and converting temples and holy sites and learning what the Egyptians knew and incorporating it into their value system. So the Christians are in Sakala. They're in the places of the beginnings of writing and civilization. And the Christians, when we listen to a Christian, we say, well, they were black. No, here they're part of the destruction and invasion of African civilization. This is important here, and this map works out because, right? And you have the monastery of Saint Anthony, and this is where we were earlier, right? And that's important because we're looking at the spread of Christianity. So Christianity, of course, the so-called apostles went to these particular areas over here, Syria, all over through here, in Egypt to spread Christianity. And, of course, you have Jerusalem over here. But Rome had a heavy grip on it, so there's other places for Christianity to expand. Right? But more interesting is that through trade routes, you have Ethiopia and you have Eritrea, and Christianity spread around the coast over here and became an epicenter, the Ethiopian Christian Church, right? Because the Hebrew culture spread also here after the destruction of the temple by Rome. So you have Hebrews moving, and then later you have their other sect, which is Christianity. I call them a sect of Hebrews moving, and so they move here first. The Christians follow. So the question is, we have this conflict now of 14th century. We can do it earlier. We have these concepts of who were the Christians, who were the Coptic Christians. Well, there's Coptic in Egypt, right? And then you have the Ethiopian, and then you have Geese, right? The question is, yes, at some point they articulated Christ to look like themselves, like you see these pictures right here. But this is in a later period where you see Africa, where they're looking like. But this does not necessarily mean what the apostles look like, right? So even in the 17th century, right, the apostles and the people of the Bible, right, looked in many colors, right? But the earliest ones, they talked about their Greek fathers, and these disciples were different complexions. And so the early Ethiopian church, right, when they represent the apostles, these are what they're representing, because they have to talk about the early how can I say writings of the church in the art. So the issue is you can make Christianity what you want to make it, but the history says that there were people who constructed the Bible and constructed the story, right? But you can make it whatever you want. You can just look at Christ, but you can look at the history. You can look at the epistles on the apostles if you believe that they are real. You can look at the places where they went, but you can see how Christianity was. So the question is, people try to make Christianity black. When you're making Christianity black, you're operating out of another value system, right? It's not conducive to the development of African people and the survival of African people. What you're doing is you're making conducive to the survival and development of your belief system, because you want to rule out things that I showed you, and that showed you that Christianity actually in the early ages spread violently against the other groups of people who they call pagans. But you want to pacify it. So when I read that caption in the museum, it says simply, they moved out, they used Egyptian temples, they reused them, they have been lost. No, the fact of the matter is they went to war with believers of other faith to spread their Christianity. And then you have Constantinople, You have, and later you have the support of the Roman Church, as they're called. And so that's the reason why I brought you in this museum, is to interact with the art and artifacts.